everyone. I'm Andrea Klim. Thanks for tuning in to Turn to the Stars. Today is July 7th, 2021, and I'm going to be talking about, as I promised yesterday, the 2021 Saturn square Uranus configuration that we're experiencing the energy influences of throughout this year. And what does that mean? How might that play out? And so I'm going to start out with talking about the dates that this will be very evident, and where we'll be experiencing the exact square between these two planets. Squares are an indication that there is a period of challenge, growth, and a time where we go through things that require us to really stay focused, and we learn a lot. And so Saturn's energy is primarily about, especially when it's in a good aspect, it brings patience, it brings self-discipline, self-control, responsibility. People are very careful about their spending habits. People tend to be more diplomatic and able to endure, and they're respectful. Order is a very important energy associated with Saturn, and it's a time where we respect rules when it's a nice aspect. When it's a difficult aspect, people tend to get fearful and feel like there's many limitations, and people may tend to really guard what they have and be more pessimistic and maybe even very stern and somewhat rigid in their responses. And, you know, it may appear to be very harsh and cold. Now, primarily Saturn's energy is the planet that tests us, and we experience restriction with good reason with Saturn, and we learn a lot. There's evidence that we have tasks that need to be focused on, and time becomes very important when we have strong Saturn aspects. And Saturn's energy can be looked at also as the controller and seeker of perfection. And when there's a strong Saturnian energy, typically people will be more cautious and aware of structure and form. And it does bring up, though, a focus on old ways and restraint, and people tend to be more serious and can be more guarded and defensive, and work becomes the center stage, meaning very important. And the disciplinarian or the Lord of Karma, these words are all very closely associated with Saturn. And Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius, which is the sign that is associated with friends, community, groups, goals, and strategies, and humanitarian type of events. And so with Saturn moving through Aquarius, we are experiencing a restructuring of a lot of the areas that I just talked about. And then we have Uranus. Uranus is the planet, when it's in positive aspect, we see advancements in science. People invent things, things are invented, and you can see resourceful creations be brought up. And you can see that people can be pioneers or very individualistic, but there's always a non-conformity. Uranus is not the planet of I'll do what everyone else is doing. It's a planet of rebellion. But it does bring progress and resourcefulness. Now we're seeing, like you heard me talk about before, that Uranus is in a square this year 3 times with Saturn, and it's moving through the sign of Taurus. So we're going to see some of the negative or connotations that are brought up, which are associated with the growth. With squares, it always is an indication of growth, and that this is not going to be easy. So we're going to see rebellion. We're going to see eccentricities. We're going to see some unpredictable events and revolutionary topics come up. Sudden, unexpected change, like a lightning bolt. And we can also see people not wanting to be responsible for their choices and being more detached, fanatical, erratic, explosive, combustion, bolts of lightning. Now, Uranus is moving through the sign of Taurus. So Uranus actually moved into Taurus back in March of 2019, and it stays there till April of 2026. And a Uranus transit through Taurus means progress will be slow. Taurus is not a fast-moving sign. If you are a Taurus, this is a time where your apple cart is going to be upset. It is a time where you will experience change and awakening to a different way of doing things. You may see that your values change during this time. And because Uranus is the great awakener, does bring unexpected events, unusual, and independence is highlighted with whenever Uranus is present. And it's the great reformer. Its energy is unconventional. There's this originality and people wanting to express their freedom of speech, their freedom to be able to express their true sense of values with Taurus. Intuition is heightened with Uranus energy. So our intuition about agriculture, about our money, about our resources, about our values is going to be heightened. Idealism is going to be very present. There may be genius types of inventions that come up because Uranus is the breaker of barriers and brings huge surprises. And so the three squares that we have this year between Saturn and Uranus are February 17th. That was of 2021, the very first Saturn square Uranus. The second occurred on June 14th of 2021. And the third will be December 24th. And I coined this as restructuring or description of these three squares. This is a long period. You've got two power planets here. And by power planets, I mean the planets that are outside of Earth. So Earth is here. We have Mars. We have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And so my description overall is that this is a time of restructuring the state of humanity. That's Saturn moving through Aquarius, and awakening the earth to a true sense of values. That's Uranus moving through Taurus. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Uranus and Taurus and some of the meanings of that. Some of the things that we're going to see happen is that old structures will change, but will do so slowly with plenty of stubbornness and accepting these changes, because Taurus does not like change. It likes things to stay stable, constant, and dependable. But that's going to be upset with Uranus moving through Taurus. Uranus and Taurus is forcing us to address important matters that need to change, such as conscious consumption, sustainable resources, how we bank, how we spend our money, and how we make money. This is a time that we may want to check into healthier ways of eating and looking at our diet, how we view love, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is the planet that rules over love, affection, relationships. and the power of attraction. So how we view love, romance, and relationships is going to change. We're waking up. Remember, Uranus is the great awakener. How we perceive abundance and our inherent worth. Small businesses will become more prominent than corporations. And as I talked about before, the ruler of Taurus is Venus. So feminism and gender equality will become very, very prominent and front and center. And the changes in how we look at the gender binary will become very, very important also. And the other thing that we may see happening is that life outside of Earth, meaning extraterrestrial life, will be something that we become very much more aware of, and the presence of it on Earth here and outside of our boundaries. And so I want to talk a little bit more now about this Saturn square. How often does Saturn and Uranus square? Once every 22 years. So we're not even through the first quarter of, we are basically halfway through this, being that it's July already of 2021. But we're already about to experience, we are experiencing life-altering planetary aspects and events. And so this is really, really important, this transit. Again, as I said earlier, these are power planets. So with this particular configuration between Saturn and Uranus, it indicates that rules will be broken. And there's a short list of general things that Taurus governs in everyday life, but these definitely are not the only things that can change. So Taurus also is an earth sign, so agriculture. We've been alerted to the environmental dangers of big agricultural companies to slow global warming. The UN warns agriculture must change. We'll be jolted by Uranus and Taurus to figure out ways to grow food without hurting the planet. It seems that something has to change about the way we produce food, and that our earth is depleted. Environmental and business. Taurus is a sign of comfort and survival in the physical world. However, Uranus taps us on the shoulder, telling us that it's time to overhaul big business practices to be more sustainable. And so for us as consumers, we can support businesses that are adapting environmental ethics. That would be really important for us as a whole, as a community, as a country, as individual states, and as a country. And with the economy, Taurus rules over money and material goods. So the world had to pull itself out of the Great Depression the last time Uranus was here in Taurus. So I'm not saying this is going to happen again, but with Uranus, we know to expect the unexpected, because it does bring surprises, the most unruly, unexpected things, like a bolt of lightning come out of the sky. No one expects that they're going to get hit by that, but when it happens, it does pull people together, because suddenly things are so different than they were, and people are in shock. This is Uranus's terrain. So what we value will also drastically change. We're going to experience a gradual switch to a different type of currency that's imminent. And in romance, Taurus is also about sensual and romantic experiences. So there's going to be a change in the way we accept romance and sensuality in our culture. It will become less and less controversial, for TV shows and movies to portray more of the traditional type of relationships. This is the effects of Saturn square Uranus. what was the traditional ways were being forced and challenged to change and wake up that things are no longer the way they used to be. And those 3 squares I talked about between these 2 planets will be in effect for most of this year. Uranus and Saturn will form exact squares as I talked about before, February, June, and December. But those effects are going to be felt between February through the 28th, April 11th through July 5th, and December 13th through January 2nd of 2022. And they will also form this aspect throughout 2022 with a peak from September through October of 2022. So, and then Jupiter, the planet of expansion and opportunity, is also going to be joining Saturn for most of the year in Aquarius, which could be a double-edged sword. Because what Jupiter does is it magnifies things, and it's going to magnify the tension as well as create more opportunities. Currently, as I'm speaking today, Jupiter is retrograde at 2 degrees of Pisces. So it's going to come back into Aquarius and during its retrograde. And that retrograde with Jupiter, let me just look at my list of all my retrogrades here. Jupiter started its retrograde at 2 degrees of Pisces on June 20th, and it's going to come back to 22 degrees of Aquarius by October 17th. And so we are going to go back over areas we already have covered or experienced with more information and more expansion into the depth of the inner processes of change that humanity is in the process of experiencing. So we can't ignore the fact that the last time Saturn and Uranus squared was during the world's descent into the Great Depression, which is what I spoke about before. The first square in 1929 happened in November, right after the stock market crashed. We've already seen record unemployment rates due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but we could see even more instability in the economy and higher unemployment rates while we're still trying to fix the situation over the next year and beyond. And to fix it, we would have to find the intersection between the scientific-minded Aquarius systems and structures with revolutionary Uranus and Taurus. So these 2 stubborn signs, Aquarius is a fixed sign, air sign, rules over the intellect, strategic ideas, the unconventional, where Uranus and Taurus says we have to change those old values. We have to change the way we spend our money. We have to change the way we make our money. We have to go deeper. And so Uranus's job is to change things. See, primarily when we look at transits, for instance, if I'm doing a reading for someone looking at their transits to their birth chart, Neptune shows us the things that are being resolved in our life, where we're going deeper into our understanding, where we're looking at the things that may not be so transparent. And then Uranus comes past, and it changes that way of doing things. And so those 2 planets, when we look at things from a whole, there's a perfect plan set up by the universe. And I like to look at that as God's plan. So I think my point here is that these 2 stubborn signs, Aquarius and Taurus, they're going to need to figure out how to work together. And that's one of the challenges, and that's some of the growing pains that we're going to be experiencing. Science and tech working together for the good of the people and the planet. There's going to be tension. Squares bring tension. People are going to dig their heels even more than before, as we have, a tug of war between these the new paradigm and the old paradigm. Compromises are going to need to be made, even for a little bit of progress. collectively, Aquarius, collectively, we're being challenged to move out of our comfort zone. But therein lies room for improvement and opportunity on a much bigger scale. So Saturn in Aquarius represents a more progressive, that is by the people, for the people, government that isn't controlled by only the richest in society. Uranus in Taurus represents changes in our money, business, environment, and food production. These three squares will jumpstart these things to work together more, no matter how uncomfortable. This is going to bring discomfort. Squares bring discomfort. We're in a period of growth and realization that something in our world has to change. Humanity has to change. The way we get from A to Z has to change. And Uranus is waking us up to that. Saturn is saying, do the work. So with Saturn being in Aquarius, it's a sign that naturally rules, aspecting Aquarius's most modern ruling planet, Uranus. So, there's a connection here because Aquarius is one of the planets that rules Aquarius is Uranus. So there's a huge connection, even though, and it's almost like they're working together, even though it's hard. These changes should help propel us into the future. We're going to see scientific and technological breakthroughs, science working together with conservation efforts on a larger scale will become even more organized and progressive as time goes on. And so, Uranus primarily, its job is to change whatever it was that was happening before. And it does it like this. Now, the square is going to slow everything down because along the way, there's going to be a lot to be learned. And some of the things that I've pointed out already are very, very significant. And we're going to have those peaks, as I talked about before, of experience. And it is a very long process of change. And it's going to bring up to our awareness things in our life inside of us and outside of us where it would be to our best in our best interest to change. And for the fixed signs of the zodiac, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, or Leo, these are the signs that drag their feet, don't like change. They like to be in control of what things in their life. And when they feel like those things are not in their control, that's when the trouble starts. And that's when it becomes very, very hard because there's a level of acceptance that's involved in this change. And it's really interesting. I want to read you something that one of my neighbors sends me every single day. And I think it's just really helpful. I don't primarily talk about the Bible or anything like that on Turn to the Stars. However, there is a lot of good things that come from the Bible, and it was written by man, but it was channeled. And for those of us that are very spiritually focused, spiritually guided, I do believe in God and I believe in his angels. And I believe that, as I was taught, that all the planets are his angels, God's angels, and that, there's the feminine energy, which is becoming so much more present in our world. And so I just want to share with you some wisdom that I find this helpful every day. And anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. We're not in the driver's seat. The key to stress reduction in your life is to let go and let God. So how do you do this? You make that divine guidance, the manager of your life. The problem is we usually want to be the managers of our lives. And so we argue and we disagree and we say, I'm in control. And this happens a lot with the fixed signs. And typically they're the ones, and I talk about myself here too, because I have some fixed energy in my chart. So sometimes you're not even aware of these innate behaviors. Uranus is waking us up to something needs to change, and Saturn's saying there's going to be work to do. So we think that we know what's best, but pretty much this is what my neighbor said. The reason that we're under so much stress is that we're constantly fighting with our minds, saying that I'm in control, I'm in charge. But every morning, if we could wake up and say, I know I'm not in charge, I'm here and I'm present and I'm listening. I am open. My heart is open to hear the messages and see the messages that come through nature, that come through symbolism or through our intuition. Uranus is intuition, waking up to a whole expanded awareness of our intuitive guidance, which I believe is from our divine creator. So I think the message is here: when you choose to make yourself the manager of your own life, it causes conflict, confusion, and stress. And when we believe and we say we're open to receive, and we're acknowledging that, okay, that is an old pattern. I am aware now that there is a better way. And for the fixed signs of the zodiac, as I said earlier, typically they fight the change because it's a matter of control. And so the only way that someone with that type of energy can change is if they inside say, hey, I see the same pattern over and over and over. Uranus, light bulb moment, suddenly, I'm aware I got to do something different here. So the challenge becomes Saturn and Aquarius. Where can I go to learn more about how to do things differently? So I just wanted to bring up that little piece and thank my neighbor for his input on that, because it's really nice. This is a time of massive rewiring going on. And especially when you've got planets retrograde. Saturn's retrograde, let's see here. Saturn's retrograde May 23rd to October 11th. And Uranus, let's see here. Uranus, I think I have that right over here. Uranus starts its retrograde August 20th through January 19th. So whatever changes we've experienced outwardly with our finances, with our money, with our values, with Uranus and Taurus, and whatever area that is transiting your chart, that's the time of the integration. Right now, we're going through that with Saturn and Aquarius retrograde. So this is pretty much the bridge that we're all crossing together. And as I said earlier, Saturn keywords are restriction, limitation, structure, boundaries, stability, rules, control, discipline, authority, responsibility, mastery. Saturn's energy is contracting and stabilizing. Saturn glues things together. It's kind of like our knees and our joints in the human body. But Uranus, on the other hand, represents the need for freedom and change. So Uranus and Taurus, freedom and change. With change comes freedom of the materials that we have in our life. Changing the way we look at the things that we value. Uranus transits bring sudden, unexpected breakdowns, breakthroughs, flashes of insight and awakenings, rebellion, and revolution. So we are going to, because Uranus rules over technology, Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. There's a tie-in here. So all kinds of cyber activity can be expected, crazy things that are unexpected to say the least are going to be experienced. So I think that primarily my point is that with these two planets in square, we are going to see things from completely different lenses once these transits are through. With Uranus, it's going to be through the grounding, earthly Taurus lens, and with Saturn through the intellectual freedom seeking Aquarius lens. So it is sort of like a clash of titans. And so there's going to be extreme tension, and we're going to experience crisis in our society. And this is going to impact our lives as individuals, either directly or indirectly. Both Taurus and Aquarius, as I said earlier, are fixed signs. So it's not like cardinal signs that move quickly to the next exciting thing. It's going to be a period of adapting and acceptance, and it's going to take a little bit longer. The changes that Saturn and Uranus, the Saturn and Uranus square bring will be long lasting and will impact our society and us as individuals in a very profound way. So I wanted to just share some insight with you about what we're experiencing. I'm going to talk more about this moving forward, because anytime any of the personal planets join up or form a aspect or a conversation with one of these planets, we're going to see some big things happen. And in your personal life, these two planets are going to stir things up, and you're going to go through things that are going to usher you to look at things from a very different perspective than you have in the past. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can contact me at Andrea at Turn to the Stars, and I can talk with you about what that would look like with your chart through a reading. Everyone, I want to say thanks for joining me and your continued support of Turn to the Stars. If you like this video, if you found this information value, please give it a like and a share. And as always, take good care that you be well. And remember, turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you in a couple days to do the recording for the new moon. We've got a new moon coming in on July 9th in Cancer. So there is going to be a focus on the family, on security, on sensitive emotional areas, and our very sense of safety, how we nurture ourselves, how we care for ourselves, how we care for other people. And that may also be, there may be a focus on the people that we call family. And so wherever that new moon is transiting in reference to your birth chart is going to be an important area of focus over the next month. So I'll come back and talk to you more about that on Friday. And until then, take good care, and I'll see you then.